In the quiet hush of the courtroom she sat forgotten, a woman erased by the man who once held her world. Up front, the young, glamorous mistress was all smiles, as if the empire was already in her grasp. But hidden within a dusty 20-year-old document was a secret that would flip the courtroom on its head. The mistress thought she had it all, but the past was about to make a dramatic comeback and reclaim everything. Her name was Emma Carter. Most people in that courtroom did not know it. They did not need to. To them, she was just another quiet figure sitting at the back, blending into the wooden benches and muted walls. But Emma had not always lived in the background. There was a time when her presence mattered. A time when her name was spoken with affection, not forgotten convenience. Emma was not born into wealth or influence. She grew up learning how to stand on her own feet, how to work for what she wanted, how to trust effort more than promises. She was the kind of woman who believed that loyalty still meant something, that love was built through consistency, not grand gestures. That belief shaped every choice she made. When people met Emma, they often described her as calm, thoughtful, grounded. She listened more than she spoke, and when she did speak, her words carried weight. She did not chase attention. She never needed to. Her strength showed up quietly, in the way she handled responsibility without complaint. Before everything fell apart, Emma believed in building a life the slow way. She believed in partnership, in growing together, in choosing stability over chaos. She invested her time, her trust, and her future into someone she thought saw the world the same way. That trust was not naive. It was sincere. Emma loved deeply, but she also loved carefully. She planned for the future, not just the next moment. She dreamed of a home filled with warmth, not luxury. Of children raised with values, not entitlement. Of a life that felt solid even when things were not perfect. That is why what happened to her cut so deeply. Because Emma did everything she was told a good woman should do. She supported. She adjusted. She waited. She believed that patience would be rewarded, that commitment would be returned with the same respect it was given. And when that belief was shattered, she did not fall apart in public. She held herself together. Even now, years later, sitting in that courtroom, Emma carried herself with the same quiet dignity. Her posture was straight. Her expression unreadable, but not empty. There was history behind her eyes. Lessons learned the hard way. Strength earned, not claimed. She was not there to remind anyone of who she used to be. She was there because the past had finally caught up. And whether the people in that room realized it or not, Emma was not just a woman watching someone else's story end. She was the reason it was about to change. Before marriage ever entered her life, Emma had already learned how to stand on her own. She grew up in an ordinary household, the kind where money was planned carefully and dreams were treated with respect, not fantasy. Nothing was handed to her easily, but nothing felt impossible either. From a young age, Emma understood the value of effort. If she wanted something, she worked for it. If she failed, she tried again. That mindset became part of who she was. Emma had ambitions, but they were never loud. She dreamed of a stable life, not a flashy one. She wanted meaningful work, honest relationships, and a sense of purpose that did not depend on validation from others. She believed success was built quietly, through discipline and consistency, not shortcuts. People around her trusted her. Friends came to her for advice because she listened without judging. Employers relied on her because she took responsibility seriously. Emma did not cut corners. She showed up. She followed through. That reliability earned her respect long before love entered the picture. Romance was not her priority, but she did believe in it. She believed love should feel safe, not chaotic. That partnership should feel equal, not competitive. Emma wanted a relationship where both people grew together, where support moved in both directions. She was not looking for perfection. She was looking for sincerity. Her values were simple but strong. Honesty mattered. Commitment mattered. Character mattered more than charm. Emma had seen enough broken promises around her to know that words meant nothing without action. She paid attention to how people behaved when things were difficult. That is how she measured trust. Before marriage, Emma was whole. She did not need someone to complete her. She wanted someone to share life with, not rescue her from it. She carried her independence lightly, never using it as armor, but never surrendering it either. There were moments when she imagined her future. A modest home, shared routines, children raised with empathy and accountability, a life that felt grounded, even when challenges appeared. Those dreams were not extravagant, but they were intentional. That is what made her choice later so meaningful. When Emma eventually chose love, it was not because she was searching for escape or status. It was because she believed she had found someone who aligned with her values. Someone who respected her strength instead of feeling threatened by it. That belief did not come from desperation. It came from trust. Looking back, nothing about Emma's life before marriage suggested weakness. She was thoughtful, capable, self-aware. She entered that chapter with clarity, not illusion. And that is why what followed was not the story of a woman who lost herself. It was the story of a woman who had something worth trying to protect. On paper, the marriage looked solid. Emma and Daniel were the couple people admired from a distance. They showed up together. They spoke politely. They smiled at the right moments. Friends described them as balanced, even lucky. Family members pointed to them as proof that commitment still worked when two people tried hard enough. In the early days, it felt real. Daniel was ambitious, driven, and articulate. He talked about the future with confidence, mapping out plans as if success were simply a matter of timing. Emma believed in that vision because she believed in effort. She supported him the way she supported everything she cared about, quietly, consistently, without keeping score. They built routines that felt reassuring. Morning coffee, evenings at home, conversations about work, goals, and what came next. Emma handled details Daniel overlooked. She created order where his life moved fast. Together they appeared complementary. To outsiders it looked like teamwork. And for a while it was. But beneath the polished surface, small imbalances began to form. Daniel started speaking more than listening. Decisions slowly shifted from discussion to assumption. Plans were made without checking whether Emma agreed, because he assumed she would adjust. She often did. Not out of weakness but because she believed flexibility was part of partnership. That belief was tested quietly. Daniel's attention drifted toward appearances. Image began to matter more than connection. He cared deeply about how their life looked to others, especially to people who could open doors for him. Emma noticed how often he talked about perception, influence, and being seen in the right circles. She noticed, but she did not panic. In private, the marriage felt different than it appeared in public. Conversations ended sooner. Silence lasted longer. Daniel became distracted, even when he was present. His patience shortened. His praise faded. Emma found herself filling gaps without realizing she was doing it. Publicly, everything still looked perfect. At gatherings, Daniel spoke proudly about their life. He introduced Emma with warmth. He accepted compliments without correcting assumptions. No one saw the distance forming in the quiet moments after doors closed. Emma felt it, though. There were evenings when she waited for connection that never arrived. Moments when she sensed that Daniel was already elsewhere, mentally stepping into a future she had not been invited to imagine. She told herself this was temporary. That ambition demanded focus. That marriage required patience. So she stayed steady. She kept things running. She avoided conflict. She chose calm over confrontation. Emma believed that consistency would bring balance back, that effort would be noticed eventually. What she did not see yet was how one-sided that effort had become. The marriage did not fracture dramatically. There were no loud arguments or sudden ultimatums. The cracks formed quietly, hidden behind polite behavior and public smiles. The kind of cracks that grow unnoticed because no one wants to believe they exist. From the outside, they were thriving. From the inside, something essential was already slipping away. And by the time Emma realized the marriage was no longer what she thought it was, the story Daniel was telling himself had already moved on, without her. The changes arrived quietly, almost politely. Emma noticed them first in the pauses. Conversations ended sooner than before. Answers felt shorter, less curious. Daniel still spoke about his work, but he stopped asking about hers with the same interest. When she shared details, his attention drifted elsewhere, as if listening had become optional. Nothing about it felt dramatic. That was the problem. Daniel began spending more time away from home. Late meetings appeared without warning. Phone calls were taken in other rooms. When Emma asked simple questions, The responses felt rehearsed. Work pressure, expectations, opportunity, all reasonable explanations, delivered with confidence. Emma accepted them because they made sense. There were small moments she brushed aside without naming. A shift in tone, a sharp response to a harmless comment, an impatience that had not existed before. Daniel became more defensive when she asked for clarity, as if curiosity itself were inconvenient. Still, she stayed composed. She told herself ambition could change people temporarily, that stress could make anyone distant. Emma believed that pushing too hard would only create unnecessary tension. She chose understanding over suspicion, calm over confrontation. Gradually, routines changed. Shared dinners became rare. Silence replaced conversation. Daniel started treating home like a resting place, not a shared space. When Emma spoke about future plans, he responded vaguely, without commitment or detail. It felt like standing next to someone already half turned away. Friends noticed less than Emma did. In public, Daniel remained charming. He laughed easily. He praised Emma casually, just enough to maintain the image. People assumed everything was fine because nothing appeared broken. Emma learned how convincing appearances could be. Privately, the imbalance grew. Emma found herself making more adjustments, lowering expectations, avoiding topics that caused irritation. She stopped asking certain questions because the answers felt empty. Each compromise seemed small on its own, easy to justify, easy to ignore. But together they formed a pattern. Daniel became more focused on image than connection. He spoke often about being seen in the right places with the right people. Success to him started sounding less like achievement and more like escape. Emma sensed that his priorities were shifting, but she could not yet see where they were heading. There were nights when she lay awake, listening to the quiet, wondering when closeness had turned into distance. She considered speaking up, then talked herself out of it. Nothing concrete had happened. There was no proof, only a feeling she did not want to trust. That hesitation mattered, because those first cracks were not warnings meant to be ignored. They were signals asking to be acknowledged. And by choosing patience over clarity, Emma unknowingly gave Daniel space to step further away. The betrayal had not happened yet, but the groundwork was already in place. The night everything collapsed did not begin with an argument. There was no raised voice, no slammed door, no warning that this would be the moment her life split in two. The house was calm, almost deceptively ordinary. Emma had finished dinner and waited, expecting Daniel to walk in as he usually did, late but predictable. He did not. Hours passed. The quiet stretched longer than it should have. Messages went unanswered. Calls rang until silence took over. Emma told herself not to jump to conclusions, yet unease settled deep in her chest, heavy and unfamiliar. When Daniel finally returned, something felt wrong immediately. He did not meet her eyes. He did not apologize. He stood near the doorway, distant, as if the space between them had already been measured and accepted. His voice was controlled when he spoke, stripped of warmth. He said they needed to talk. The words landed sharply. Emma listened as Daniel explained his decision with the calm precision of someone presenting a plan. He spoke about change, about opportunity, about a future that required focus and freedom. His tone suggested inevitability, as if the outcome had been decided long before that moment. She tried to understand. She asked questions. She searched his face for hesitation. There was none. Daniel told her the marriage no longer fit the life he was building. He said he needed to move forward without attachments that slowed him down. He framed his choice as practical, almost reasonable, as if love were a temporary arrangement instead of a promise. Then Emma told him the truth she had been holding. She was pregnant. The room seemed to freeze. For a brief moment, shock crossed his face. It disappeared quickly, replaced by resolve. Daniel did not sit down. He did not ask how she felt. He did not ask what she needed. He said the timing was unfortunate. He said this made things more complicated. Those words cut deeper than anger ever could. Emma stood still, trying to process the cruelty disguised as logic. She reminded him that they were married, that they had planned a future together, that this was not a mistake but a life already forming. Daniel responded with distance. He told her he could not afford distractions. He said responsibility belonged to her now. He spoke as if the child existed outside of him, separate from his choices. Then he produced papers he had prepared in advance. Divorce documents. Terms outlined clearly. Conditions stated without emotion. He offered a settlement framed as generosity, not obligation. He insisted on clean separation, no contact, no connection. Emma realized then that this moment had not surprised him. It had been scheduled. The injustice was not only that he left. It was how deliberately he did it. How calmly he removed himself from consequences. How easily he reduced years of commitment to inconvenience. She signed because she could not breathe. Because fighting required energy she did not have. Because disbelief had numbed her hands. Because he stood there waiting, already detached, already gone. When Daniel walked out, he did not look back. Emma remained where she was, holding the weight of what had just been taken from her. The future she believed in vanished without explanation. The partnership she trusted dissolved into paperwork. She was abandoned without negotiation. Left carrying a responsibility she never expected to carry alone. Forced into survival without preparation. This was not a misunderstanding. This was not mutual distance. This was a choice made by one person at the cost of another. And in that moment, injustice stopped being an idea. It became her reality. Her name surfaced quietly, the way inconvenient truths often do. Emma did not hear it from Daniel. She learned it through fragments. A comment that felt out of place. A photo someone forgot to hide. A shift in tone when his world was mentioned. The pieces came together slowly, forming a picture Emma had not asked to see. The mistress moved through Daniel's life with confidence. She was younger, stylish, comfortable in rooms Emma had never tried to enter. She knew how to perform success, how to look like she belonged. To outsiders, she fit the image Daniel was chasing. Polished, ambitious, untouched by complication. Unlike Emma, she did not wait. She stepped into the space Daniel cleared without hesitation. She did not question how it was made available. She did not ask what had been displaced. To her, opportunity was proof enough. If he chose her, then the choice justified itself. That belief shaped everything. The contrast between the two women was sharp. Emma stayed quiet, focused on survival, carrying responsibility that had arrived without warning. Her days were practical. Her nights were heavy. She measured progress in stability, not attention. She learned how to move forward without an audience. The mistress moved loudly. She appeared publicly beside Daniel. She traveled. She celebrated milestones Emma never knew existed. She smiled for cameras and introductions, as if history began the moment she arrived. In her world, being visible meant being important. Emma saw the difference clearly. One woman was building a life from the ground up, grinding through uncertainty, doing the hard yards without recognition. The other enjoyed the benefits of momentum she did not create, stepping into a story already funded and curated. Friends noticed. They whispered. Some sympathized quietly. Others stayed neutral, choosing comfort over honesty. Emma did not correct assumptions. She did not compete for narrative control. She understood something the mistress did not. Time reveals what image hides. The mistress believed she had replaced someone weaker. She treated Emma like a footnote, a former chapter that no longer mattered. She assumed silence meant acceptance. That absence meant surrender. That assumption would cost her later. Because Emma did not disappear. She adapted. She endured. She stayed grounded when everything around her shifted. She did not chase validation or attempt to prove worth to people who had already decided what story they preferred. Meanwhile, the mistress grew comfortable. Comfort bred arrogance. Confidence turned into entitlement. She spoke as if the future belonged to her by default. She acted untouchable, certain that proximity to power meant protection. From the outside, it looked like a clean transfer. From the inside, something remained unresolved. The mistress had taken a place without understanding its foundation. She had stepped into a life without asking what had been built underneath it. She believed the past was irrelevant because it was quiet. She did not realize quiet does not mean gone. It means waiting. And one day, in a room where titles mattered less than truth, that difference between the two women would become impossible to ignore. The truth arrived quietly, in a way that felt almost cruel. Emma stood alone in the bathroom, staring at the result she had not prepared herself to see. Her hands trembled as the meaning settled in. This was not confusion. This was not uncertainty. This was confirmation. She was pregnant. The weight of it pressed down slowly, not as fear at first but as disbelief. This should have been a shared moment. A conversation. A plan whispered late at night. Instead, it unfolded in silence, with no one there to steady her breath or meet her eyes. When the doctor confirmed there were 2 heartbeats, the room seemed to tilt. Twins. For a brief second, something warm surfaced. Hope, maybe. The idea that life could still surprise her with something good, even after everything that had been taken. That moment passed quickly, replaced by reality that demanded attention. Emma told Daniel the next day. She chose her words carefully. She did not accuse. She did not beg. She spoke calmly, believing that truth would matter once it was spoken out loud. She expected shock, confusion, questions. What she received was distance. Daniel listened without interruption, then responded as if she had delivered inconvenient news, not life-changing truth. He said the situation complicated things further. He said this confirmed his decision. He said she would manage. That was all. No concern. No responsibility. No recognition of what he had created. Emma realized then that abandonment was not just physical. It was emotional, deliberate, and complete. He had already separated himself from consequences long before she spoke. As weeks passed, his absence became routine. He did not attend appointments. He did not ask about her health. He did not ask how she was coping with the exhaustion, the nausea, the fear that surfaced when she lay awake at night. Messages went unanswered. Calls were unnecessary. He had made his position clear. Emma carried the pregnancy alone. Her body changed faster than she expected. Fatigue set in early and stayed. Simple tasks demanded more energy than before. She learned to pace herself, to rest when she could, to keep going even when strength felt limited. People asked questions she did not know how to answer. Some assumed there was support she did not mention. Others avoided the topic entirely. Emma learned how invisible a woman could become once her life stopped fitting a comfortable narrative. There were nights when fear crept in quietly. Not dramatic fear. Practical fear. How she would manage financially. How she would protect 2 lives when she sometimes struggled to steady her own. How she would prepare for a future that no longer included partnership. And still she continued. Emma spoke to her children before they were born. She promised them stability, even when she did not know exactly how she would provide it. She promised them honesty even when silence felt easier. Those promises anchored her when everything else felt uncertain. The day the twins arrived was long and exhausting. The hospital room was bright and unfamiliar. Voices moved around her. Time blurred. Emma faced it without a hand to hold, without reassurance offered by someone who shared responsibility. She relied on herself because there was no alternative. When she heard the first cry, something shifted. Then the second. 2 small lives entered the world. Unaware of the circumstances that surrounded them, Emma held them close, feeling fear and determination collide in her chest. In that moment, abandonment took on a different meaning. She had been left, but she was still here. Emma did not collapse under the weight of what she had lost. She absorbed it. She adjusted. She stayed present. The future remained uncertain, but one thing became clear. She was no longer surviving for herself alone. And that truth would shape every decision she made from that day forward. Life did not slow down for Emma after the twins were born. It accelerated. Days blended into nights, marked by feeding schedules, restless cries, and a constant state of alertness. Sleep came in fragments. Rest felt optional. Emma learned quickly that exhaustion did not pause responsibility. If anything, it sharpened it. She was alone in every sense of the word. There was no partner to take a shift. No safety net quietly waiting in the background. Decisions that were once shared now rested entirely on her shoulders. Every choice mattered because 2 lives depended on it. Emma adjusted without announcement. She learned how to function on limited rest, how to plan days around unpredictable needs, how to prioritize without resentment. She moved through routines with focus, even when her body begged for pause. Strength for her was not dramatic. It was practical. Money became a constant calculation. She tracked every expense carefully, cutting what was unnecessary, stretching what remained. Comfort turned into efficiency. Wants were replaced by needs. Emma did not complain about it. She adapted because survival required clarity, not bitterness. Work demanded her attention as much as motherhood did. She returned when she was ready, balancing schedules that rarely aligned. Some days felt relentless. Other days tested her patience quietly. Emma learned to carry stress without letting it spill over. She showed up consistently even when no one saw the effort behind it. People offered opinions freely. Some praised her resilience without understanding its cost. Others questioned her choices, as if endurance were a decision instead of a requirement. Emma listened without absorbing judgment. She trusted her instincts more than commentary. There were moments when isolation settled heavily. Late nights brought questions she pushed aside during the day. She wondered how long she could sustain this pace. She wondered if the twins would feel the absence she worked so hard to minimize. She wondered whether stability would ever feel natural again. Those thoughts did not weaken her. They reminded her why she could not stop. Emma built routines that anchored her family. Mornings followed structure. Evenings focused on presence. She created consistency where uncertainty threatened to take over. The twins learned safety through repetition, through knowing what to expect, through her steady tone and dependable actions. Love showed up in quiet ways. In the way she held them when the world felt overwhelming. In the way she spoke calmly even when fatigue pressed hard. In the way she celebrated small milestones without audience or acknowledgement. Emma did not romanticize struggle. She faced it directly. She understood that survival was not heroic. It was necessary. What mattered was that she did not let hardship define her children's experience of the world. As the twins grew, so did her resolve. She taught them kindness without softness that blurred boundaries. She taught accountability without fear. She showed them through behavior that effort mattered more than excuses. They watched her handle pressure without collapse. They learned resilience by example, not instruction. Over time, something shifted. What began as survival slowly turned into stability. Not ease but control. Emma gained confidence in her ability to handle whatever came next. Challenges still appeared, but they no longer felt insurmountable. She had proven something to herself. That she could endure without bitterness. That she could lead without dominance. That she could build a life defined by intention, not abandonment. The world might have overlooked her. Daniel might have erased her from his story. But Emma did not disappear. She stood day after day, shaping a future with discipline and quiet determination. The kind of strength that did not demand recognition, yet commanded respect. And that respect, earned slowly through survival, would matter more than anyone realized later. Because when the past eventually resurfaced, Emma would not face it as someone asking for mercy. She would face it as someone who had already survived the worst. Time did what answers never did. It moved forward without asking whether Emma was ready. Days turned into months. Months folded quietly into years. The sharp edges of pain softened, not because they were forgiven, but because they were carried long enough to lose their power to cut. Emma did not receive closure. There was no apology, no explanation that made sense. No moment where the past neatly wrapped itself up and stepped aside. Instead, healing arrived differently. Came through routine. Through responsibility. Through showing up again and again, even when the reasons were not obvious. The twins grew quickly. Their questions changed. Their needs shifted. Emma adjusted with them, learning when to protect and when to step back. She watched them develop personalities shaped by stability, not absence. Laughter returned to the home, slowly at first, then freely. Emma matured in ways she never expected. She became more selective with her energy. She stopped explaining herself to people who did not listen. She trusted her instincts without second-guessing. Experience replaced uncertainty. Confidence grew from repetition, not reassurance. Work became more than survival. She found rhythm in responsibility, clarity in progress. Each small win reinforced her sense of control. Emma built competence quietly, without announcing milestones. Success was measured internally now, not by comparison. There were moments when memories surfaced unexpectedly. A familiar place. Passing comment. A name overheard. They stirred emotion, but no longer dictated reaction. Emma acknowledged them without engaging. She understood that healing did not require forgetting. It required perspective. The past remained unresolved, but it stopped defining her present. Emma learned that closure was not something granted by others. It was something built through acceptance. She accepted that some people leave without explanation, that some choices are made without regard for consequence, that fairness is not guaranteed. That acceptance freed her. She stopped waiting for accountability that might never come. She stopped rehearsing conversations that would never happen. Her focus shifted entirely to what she could control. And that shift changed everything. The twins grew into observant children. They noticed consistency. They noticed effort. They noticed the calm that replaced tension over time. Emma did not hide struggle from them, but she did not let it dominate their world. Home became a place of grounding. Not perfect, not untouched by history, but safe. Emma's life did not look like the one she once imagined. It looked stronger, more intentional, less fragile. She had learned to move forward without resolution, to heal without validation. That maturity shaped her presence. She carried herself with quiet assurance. Not hardened but clarified. Not distant but discerning. She no longer needed to prove resilience. She lived it. And while she believed the past was behind her, unseen and settled, time was preparing something else. Something unfinished. Something that would bring everything back into focus whether she wanted it or not. Because healing does not prevent the past from returning. It only ensures you are strong enough to face it when it does. The letter arrived without warning. It sat among ordinary mail, indistinguishable at first glance. No dramatic envelope. No urgent markings. Just a clean official seal that felt heavier the moment Emma picked it up. Something about it pulled her attention in a way she could not explain. She opened it slowly. The words were formal, precise, unemotional. A summons to appear in court for the reading of a will. A name she had not spoken in years stared back at her from the page, unmistakable and unwelcome. Daniel. The room seemed to still. Emma read the letter again, hoping she had misunderstood. She had not. Daniel was dead. The court required her presence as a named party in the probate proceedings. Attendance was not optional. The date was set. The location was clear. Old wounds reopened instantly. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Quietly the way they always had. Memories resurfaced without permission. The betrayal. The silence. The years spent rebuilding without acknowledgement. Emma felt the familiar tightening in her chest, the reflex she thought time had erased. She folded the letter carefully and placed it on the table. Questions crowded in. Why now? Why her? Why after all this time? She had lived years without contact. No messages. No updates. No recognition of the life she had built. The past had remained distant and contained. This letter shattered that distance in a single moment. Emma did not feel grief. She felt disruption. The stability she had fought for suddenly felt fragile, as if something she had buried carefully was demanding attention. She worried about what this meant for the twins, about what might surface, about whether facing the past would undo the balance she had created. That night sleep came slowly. Thoughts circled endlessly. Emma imagined courtrooms she had never entered, conversations she had never wanted. She wondered what Daniel could possibly have left unresolved, what obligations still connected them after everything that had been severed. The letter offered no answers. It only demanded presence. In the days that followed, Emma debated ignoring it. She considered letting the past remain untouched. Walking away felt tempting, safe, but something held her back. A sense that this was unfinished whether she liked it or not. The summons did not ask for forgiveness. It did not offer explanation. It required confrontation. Emma looked at her children and knew avoidance was not an option. Whatever waited in that courtroom had already reached into her life. Pretending otherwise would not protect them. So she made a decision. She would go. Not out of hope. Not out of expectation. But because the past had called her name, and this time she would answer it on her own terms. The courthouse rose ahead of them like a reminder Emma had not asked for. Cold stone. High steps. Heavy doors that looked designed to make people feel small before they even entered. Emma paused for a brief moment outside, steadying her breath. The twins stood close, sensing the weight of the place without fully understanding it. Inside, the air felt different. Quieter. Thicker. Conversations dropped as people noticed them walking in. Shoes echoed against polished floors. Heads turned, not openly, but just enough to register curiosity. Emma felt the familiar sensation of being observed, measured, categorized. She kept walking. The courtroom itself was already filling when they entered. Lawyers shuffled papers. Well-dressed guests claimed seats near the front, their confidence suggesting they belonged there. Emma guided the twins toward the back, choosing distance over visibility. That choice did not go unnoticed. Whispers followed them. Brief glances lingered longer than necessary. Some people tried to place her, searching their memory for context. Others dismissed her instantly, assuming she was irrelevant. Emma recognized the look. She had lived with it for years. She took her seat calmly. The twins sat beside her, quiet and composed. Their presence drew attention, even when no one spoke about it. Two children, nearly grown, seated behind a woman no one seemed to recognize. Questions formed silently in the room. Who were they? Why were they here? Emma felt judgment move through the space like a current. Not hostile but dismissive. Assumptions formed quickly. She was likely a formality. Past obligation. Someone included for procedural reasons, not importance. At the front, the mistress had already taken her place. She sat confidently beside her attorney, posture relaxed, expression assured. Her attire was impeccable. Everything about her suggested control. She spoke quietly to those around her, smiling easily, as if this were a confirmation of status rather than a legal proceeding. She did not look back. That absence of acknowledgement spoke volumes. Emma noticed the contrast immediately. The room gravitated toward certainty, toward people who looked like they belonged. The mistress fit the expectation perfectly. Emma did not try to compete with that image. She had no intention of performing. The judge entered. Everyone stood. Silence fell into place, formal and absolute. When they sat again, the atmosphere shifted subtly. This was no longer a social space. This was a place where outcomes were decided. Emma focused on stillness. She did not fidget. She did not scan the room. She sat grounded, aware of the weight of the moment but unwilling to let it overwhelm her. The years had taught her restraint, control, how to exist under scrutiny without shrinking. She felt the twins beside her, steady and present. Their calm mattered. It reminded her why she was here. Whatever unfolded next would not be about appearances. It would be about truth. As the proceedings began, Emma sensed something unspoken in the room. Confidence rested heavily on one side. Expectation leaned forward. No one anticipated disruption. No one expected the woman at the back to matter. And that assumption settled comfortably, unchallenged, just long enough to become dangerous. Because when judgment is formed too early, it rarely survives the truth that follows. The mistress looked exactly like someone who believed the ending had already been written. She sat near the front, legs crossed with ease, hands resting lightly on her lap as if the courtroom were just another room she owned. Every detail about her presence signaled certainty. The tailored outfit, the calm smile, the way she leaned toward her lawyer, listening with casual interest rather than concern. This was her moment. She had mourned publicly. She had stood beside Daniel when his name still opened doors. She had been introduced as his partner without hesitation, accepted into circles Emma had never been allowed to enter. To her, today was not about loss. It was about confirmation. She glanced around the room, acknowledging nods and quiet greetings. Familiar faces returned her confidence. People who mattered knew who she was. They knew where power now sat. That recognition reinforced everything she believed. She did not look back. Not once did her eyes drift toward the woman seated at the rear. Emma and the twins existed outside her awareness, dismissed without effort. In her mind, the past had been settled long ago. Whatever history existed before her arrival had no claim on the future she had secured. The mistress assumed silence meant surrender. She assumed distance meant insignificance. Her lawyer whispered something to her. She nodded, unimpressed. as if the remaining formalities were beneath her attention. The estate was substantial, the outcome obvious. There was no reason to feel threatened. That confidence bordered on arrogance. She shifted in her seat, relaxed, already planning the next steps. Control of assets. Public announcements. The continuation of a life built on access and privilege. Everything about her posture suggested ownership, not inheritance. Emma observed quietly. She noticed how certainty had hardened the mistress's expression, how comfort had replaced caution, how entitlement had dulled awareness. The woman at the front had never questioned her position because nothing had ever forced her to. That was the vulnerability she could not see. The mistress had stepped into a story without understanding its foundation. She knew the surface narrative, not the structure underneath it. She had been told what mattered and believed it without asking why. Confidence without context can be dangerous. As the judge prepared to proceed, the mistress leaned back, exhaling slowly. This was routine, predictable, controlled, the kind of moment she thrived in. She did not notice the subtle shift in the room, the way attention began to settle, the way anticipation sharpened. She smiled, unaware that certainty was about to betray her. Because arrogance does not collapse loudly. It collapses in silence, the moment truth interrupts the story it was never part of. The judge adjusted the papers with deliberate care. The sound was small, almost insignificant, yet it carried through the room like a signal. Conversations ceased. Bodies straightened. The air shifted from casual anticipation to focused attention. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for, the point where assumptions were supposed to become official. The judge began reading. The opening lines were formal, measured, unemotional. Legal language filled the space, precise and detached. Names were mentioned, titles clarified, dates confirmed. Each sentence landed cleanly, without drama, without reaction. At the front, the mistress listened with quiet satisfaction. Her lawyer leaned closer, following along, occasionally nodding. This part was expected. Charitable donations were listed. Minor bequests acknowledged. People in the front rows exchanged subtle looks, recognizing familiar institutions and figures. Everything sounded exactly as it should. The mistress smiled faintly. This was moving smoothly. The judge continued, voice steady, rhythm unbroken. Properties were named, assets described, luxury wrapped neatly in language designed to sound neutral. With every confirmation, the mistress relaxed further, as if the outcome had already been secured. Emma listened without reacting. She did not shift in her seat. She did not search faces for clues. Her focus remained on the judge's voice, on the cadence of the reading, on the pauses between sections. Experience had taught her that meaning often lived in what was not rushed. The judge turned a page. That sound again. The room leaned forward almost unconsciously. This was the part everyone expected to matter most. Control of the estate. Authority. Finality. The mistress straightened slightly, anticipation flickering behind her composure. The judge read the next allocation. The mistress's expression faltered, just briefly. The wording was precise. The percentage was specific. Smaller than expected. Not wrong but unexpected. Her lawyer frowned, scanning his own copy quickly, then glanced at her with subtle concern. She leaned toward him, whispering sharply. He shook his head once. The judge continued without pause, moving on as if nothing unusual had occurred. Murmurs rippled softly through the room, controlled but unmistakable. People exchanged glances, recalculating assumptions. The mistress sat upright now. Her confidence tightened into focus. This had to be procedural. A technical detail. Something to be clarified later. She told herself not to react. Control mattered. Appearances mattered. The judge reached the next section. His tone shifted slightly. Not dramatically. Just enough to be noticed. He referenced an additional document. Older. Separate from the primary will. Filed years earlier. The language changed, becoming more deliberate, more careful, as if each word carried weight beyond its sound. Emma felt the shift immediately. The courtroom quieted completely. The judge explained that this document governed a significant portion of the estate, that it predated several major developments, that it had remained sealed until this proceeding. The mistress's composure cracked visibly now, confusion replacing confidence. She whispered again. Her lawyer flipped pages faster. The judge did not look up. He read steadily, outlining terms that did not match the story the room believed. Authority was not assigned where expected. Control was defined differently. Ownership traced back further than recent history. Emma's hands remained still. Her heartbeat was steady. The judge reached the end of the section and paused. The silence stretched. Every eye focused forward. The mistress leaned in, breath held, waiting for correction, for explanation, for reassurance that this was a misunderstanding. The judge looked up. His gaze moved across the room, not hurried, not searching, until it settled on the back row. On Emma. The shift was immediate and unmistakable. The judge spoke her name clearly, formally, without emphasis, as if stating an obvious fact. The words echoed longer than expected, bouncing off the walls, sinking into the stunned quiet. The mistress froze. Her lawyer went still. Emma did not react outwardly. She met the moment with the same composure she had carried into the room. Years of restraint, discipline, and survival held her steady. She did not need to speak. The document spoke for her. The judge continued, confirming the role, the authority, the connection that had never been acknowledged publicly. Gasps broke the silence. Whispers surged, uncontrolled now. The room recalculated in real time. Everything it thought it knew shifted abruptly, violently. The mistress turned around slowly. For the first time, her eyes landed on Emma. The certainty that had carried her into the courtroom vanished. In its place stood disbelief, then panic, then something darker. The story she believed in had collapsed under the weight of a truth she had never seen coming. The judge lowered the papers. The will had been read, and nothing in that room would ever look the same again. The silence broke all at once. It started with a sharp intake of breath from the front row, followed by the unmistakable scrape of a chair shifting too quickly. The mistress turned fully now, staring at Emma as if the courtroom lights had suddenly exposed something she was never meant to see. Her face drained of color. "That is not possible," she said, her voice cutting through the room before she could stop herself. The judge did not react. He lifted the document again, calm and unmoved, and continued reading as if interruptions were nothing more than background noise. He clarified the details slowly, deliberately, each sentence tightening the reality around the room. The document had been executed years earlier. It was legally binding. It superseded later arrangements. Ownership, authority, control. All of it traced back to one name. Emma Carter. The words landed with finality. The mistress's composure collapsed in real time. Her confident posture gave way to agitation. She stood abruptly, hands shaking, voice rising as disbelief turned into panic. She demanded explanations. She accused. She insisted there had been a mistake. There was none. The judge explained in plain terms that a separate trust had been established long before the life the mistress believed she inherited. That trust named Emma as the primary beneficiary. Daniel's role had been defined, limited, conditional. The structure had been clear from the beginning. Emma had not taken anything. She had always owned it. The room erupted into whispers. People leaned toward one another, recalculating every assumption they had walked in with. Journalists scribbled furiously. Lawyers whispered under their breath. Faces that once dismissed Emma now watched her with stunned attention. The mistress lost control. Her voice broke as she protested. Louder now, emotion spilling unchecked. She pointed toward Emma, accusing her of deception, of manipulation, of hiding in the shadows. The sound of her anger echoed, sharp and unrestrained. The judge struck the gavel once. Order returned instantly. Emma remained seated. She did not smile. She did not speak. Her reaction was not loud enough to satisfy the chaos unfolding around her, and that made it more powerful. She had spent years being underestimated. She did not need to correct the narrative now. The sealed envelope in her bag suddenly felt heavier. As proceedings continued, the judge acknowledged additional documentation, evidence that confirmed the trust's validity. The legal foundation was unshakable. The outcome irreversible. The mistress sank back into her chair. Her breathing was shallow. Her hands clenched tightly, as if gripping certainty that no longer existed. Everything she believed she stood on had disappeared beneath her without warning. Emma finally stood. The movement was subtle, but it shifted the room's focus instantly. She did not address the mistress. She did not look at the audience. Her attention remained on the judge as she acknowledged the ruling with a simple nod. That was all. No speech. No confrontation. No victory lap. The contrast was unmistakable. One woman unraveled because her power depended on illusion. The other stood grounded because her strength had been built quietly, over time without witnesses. The mistress's scream echoed again, sharper now, raw with desperation. It did not change anything. The judge closed the file. The decision was final. Emma sat back down, heart steady, expression composed. Years of struggle, sacrifice, and silence had converged into this single moment. Not as revenge. Not as spectacle. As truth. The past had risen, exactly as promised. And it had taken everything back. Emma left the courtroom the same way she had entered it. Quietly. Without spectacle. Without looking back. Cameras gathered outside. Questions followed. Voices competed for her attention, but she did not stop. She held the twins close, guiding them forward away from the noise. The world suddenly wanted her reaction, her story, her victory. Emma offered none of it. She had already said everything that mattered by surviving. In the days that followed, life did not transform overnight. There were legal meetings, responsibilities, adjustments that demanded focus. Power arrived not as celebration, but as obligation. Emma approached it the same way she approached everything else in her life. With intention. She did not use the outcome to erase anyone. She did not seek humiliation or public revenge. She made decisions that reflected stability, fairness, and long-term thinking. The same values that carried her through abandonment now shaped her authority. The twins noticed. They watched how she handled attention without arrogance. How she responded to change without losing herself. How she refused to define success by the collapse of someone else. That lesson mattered more than any inheritance. Emma understood something clearly now. True justice is quiet. True strength does not perform. She did not win because someone else lost. She won because she never disappeared. Because she built a life while being underestimated. Because she carried responsibility when no one was watching. The mistress faded from relevance as quickly as she had risen. Power that depends on proximity rarely survives truth. Emma did not follow that story. She had no reason to. Her focus remained forward. The past no longer had leverage over her. It had revealed itself, closed its loop, and stepped aside. What remained was a future defined by choice, not damage. Emma's story was never about revenge. It was about resilience. About dignity. About the quiet strength it takes to keep going when the world looks the other way. Sometimes the most powerful response to betrayal is not confrontation, but endurance. Not noise, but consistency. Not vengeance, but becoming unshakable. And now a question for you. Have you ever seen someone underestimated like this, only to rise when it mattered most? If you were in Emma's place, would you have handled it the same way? And where are you watching from right now? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective matters.